Let's find out what's going on with Neama Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers and former federal prosecutor. Neama, thank you so much for joining me. Would you mind talking us through where we are with the trial?
Today is day 2 of the trial, and the government put on its star witness. That, of course, is Cassie Ventura, Combs's longtime girlfriend of more than a decade. And she is laying out the graphic and explicit details of these freak-offs. And what separates sex trafficking from consensual sex here in the United States is the presence of force, fraud, or coercion. So the government is arguing coercion and force here. The coercion is the rampant drug use. I mean, so much that Ventura testified that she would vomit at times, and the force being the many guns that Combs had, his security that would set up the hotel rooms for these freak-offs. And Ventura testified that she felt pressured to do this, so much so that she felt that she was unable to say no.
It's the defence, of course, would argue that they were together for nearly 10 years. She could have walked at any point. This is often the defence we hear, actually, with domestic abusers as well. Why do these women stay? Surely she wasn't a prisoner. She was in her own home. She could have left at any point. How will that be justified?
That's a compelling argument, and I could tell you, as a former prosecutor who's handled many physical and sexual assault cases, as well as a current civil plaintiff's lawyer who represents these victims. That's the defense that's raised in every case. Well, why didn't you leave? I think jurors, everyone knows someone who's in a toxic relationship, and that's really the psychology of abuse. There will be expert witnesses, at least one that comes and testifies in this case, to explain why sometimes victims, they don't feel the power to leave, or whether it's the physical force or the manipulation that they just don't have the strength to do so. Now, I'm not saying that's going to carry the day, but that is going to be the real differentiator in this case. Does the jury believe that this was all consensual? She is a strong, independent, powerful woman. That's what the defense is trying to do, actually raise the stature of the victims here. Or is this someone who was so controlled by Combs that she was compelled to submit to these freak-offs against her will?
Were there any revelations from Cassie? I mean, my understanding is that the court was surprised that she named people that she said were complicit.
She has started to name members of Combs's inner circle, including Christina Joram, who was Combs' chief of staff. And I expect we're going to hear from some of those former employees, people that would set up the freak-offs, procure the sex workers, buy the baby oil, set up the cameras and the lights. This wasn't a one-man operation here. But really, I think the surprising details so far aren't necessarily who, but what. We're talking about some very explicit details of her being urinated on, baby oil all over the walls and doors, blood on the sheets because she was menstruating. Really some graphic details, and I think the jurors may be asking themselves, no one should or would consent to this, and I think that sort of shock and awe strategy is part and parcel of the prosecution's case here.
And my understanding is as well that she's now married and heavily pregnant, and I mean, it must be very distressing actually, but her husband wasn't allowed in with her, is that right?
Yes, so she is very pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant. So there was a concern that she may go into early labor and be unavailable. So that's why the government really wanted to put her on as quickly as possible. But her husband is a potential witness in the case. So in the United States in court, what you don't want is for witnesses who may testify later in the trial to be observing the trial, because then they may be tailoring their testimony to conform to previous witnesses. So generally speaking, any potential witness in the case, they have to be excluded from the courtroom. Doesn't matter if they're married to a witness or they're not. It's just a general rule in these cases. So that's what happened here.
It's very difficult. I mean, I can imagine that in the old days being the way to stop witnesses from, potential witnesses from knowing what's going on in a courtroom. But of course, we don't live in that world anymore. You and I are talking about what Cassie said. Everyone will know what Cassie said. The whole world knows what Cassie said. How safe is a jury in a case like this? There's no cameras allowed because it's a federal case. So there's no cameras in there, which is unusual for us as Brits. We were expecting to see cameras there, although we don't have them here. So you've got sketch artists. But how do you keep your prosecution or your defence clean in modern times?
It's very difficult. And like you said, there are no cameras in federal courts or even New York State courts. I'm here in Los Angeles, so we are used to cameras here in California. We're in Hollywood. So each jurisdiction matters and they can create their own rules. But like you said, I mean, this is a case that the entire world knows about. My parents don't even watch TV, and they've seen the 2016 video of Diddy beating Cassie Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel here in Los Angeles. And jurors, they're ordinary people. And whether they're on TikTok or Instagram or X, you know, they can't help but be influenced by outside factors. So the judge, of course, instructs them not to be on social media, not to watch the news, to decide the case solely based on the facts and evidence in the case. The only real way to guarantee that, unfortunately, is to sequester the jury, take their electronics, lock them up, you know, proverbially speaking, of course, not literally, but put them in a hotel for 2 months. That's such an imposition, and to take people away from their friends and family for that period of time. People already don't want to serve on juries in this country, and if you do that, it'll make it people less likely. But that's really the only way to guarantee that none of that comes into the deliberations in the case.
But if you were defending P. Diddy in this case, that video footage that we're talking about here, where he beat Cassie, the most horrendous footage, anyone would agree with that. Would you try to get that dismissed? That wouldn't, I mean, it's too late because it's out there, but that is so prejudicial to this case.
Well, they tried to get it dismissed, saying that it was sped up, it was inaccurate. The judge let it in, and rightfully so. I mean, this is the important thing about video. Video doesn't lie. People can lie, witnesses, victims, criminal defendants lie all the time. This video was so powerful that Combs denied all these allegations after Cassie filed her lawsuit in November 2023. Combs settled it the next day, paid a significant 8-figure sum reportedly. He still denied the allegations. His homes in Los Angeles and Miami were raided. Combs denied the allegations. Only after CNN got a copy of that video in May of last year did he finally come out and issue a public apology. And that's what you're seeing in this case. The defense has to agree to some sort of physical violence. They're trying to separate the physical violence from sexual. And that makes sense because there's clear evidence of physical violence, but the physical violence isn't being charged in the case. It's potentially a racketeering act, but the charges are sex trafficking, prostitution, generally sex-related crimes. So you see the defense trying to walk this fine line, saying this was a mutually violent relationship when it comes to physical force, but all the sex was consensual. I don't know if they're going to be able to walk that line or not.
I mean, and that's really the legal point, isn't it? That actually, were I to be a juror and wondering if there had been coercion in terms of the sexual offences that Cassie claims and others claim, it would be really easy to see that violence and go, well, I'd pretty much do anything rather than go through that again. So it is so prejudicial. I just wonder how a jury was found that wouldn't go in to a case like this without a preconceived idea of how they're going to end up.
Well, that's one thing that makes this case very different. Normally, jurors walk into that courtroom with a blank slate. They don't know the parties. They don't know the evidence. But here, everyone knows who Sean Diddy Combs is, and everyone has seen that video. So much of jury selection was spent by the judge and the lawyers asking the jurors their views on Combs and that video and what they thought, because that is going to be the key piece of evidence in the case. And we know it was so because the government's very first witness was the security guard from that very hotel who's authenticated authenticating the video. So that's how powerful that video is.
It is quite extraordinary. Neama, I'm really interested about the witness lists. Presumably they will have been given to each of the defence and the prosecution by now. Are there any surprises on that list, or can we expect last-minute surprise witnesses?
I think we can expect last-minute surprises. The witness list certainly hasn't been made public in terms of who they're going to call next. Everyone wants to know what other celebrities participated in the freak-off story.
Yeah.
That's what everyone is asking. There's so much out there on social media, rumors, speculation. So far, no one yet, but we know, again, that this wasn't a one-man operation. There were other people who reportedly participated in these freak-offs at these infamous white parties. We'll see what names are named, if any, because I think that's the biggest bombshell that may shock not only the United States, but the entire world if a celebrity is named.
There must be a fair amount of people who are a little bit worried at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. If I attended one of Diddy's white parties or participated, I would have my lawyer on speed dial, because the consequences, both inside and outside the courtroom, can be dramatic. The last thing anyone in Hollywood wants is to be associated with this Diddy trial that's happening right now.
Just before I let you go, can I ask you about a different case, and that is the Epstein files? We were promised that the Americans were promised that these Epstein files would be released. Pam Bondi is saying that they're not going to be for a while. That is another case where there will be a lot of people who are very worried. And my understanding is the FBI are viewing 20,000 videos or clips or something. I don't know if it's true or not. It may just be a rumour. Are we ever going to see those files?
I don't know. You know, the day that the files were released was probably one of the most underwhelming releases I've ever. I had planned my entire day, because I'm a legal analyst on TV. I thought, I mean, this was going to be the day where names were named. And really, Pam Bondi, I think, has a little bit of egg on her face to sort of build the hype and make the announcement, when really what was released were, you know, the contacts, which we already knew about, the flight logs, which everyone had seen. So certainly not a whole lot of new information. We'll see if anything actually finally does get released. At least according to Bondi and President Trump, that's something that they're committed to doing. But the question I have is, how long does it take to release the files? I think, frankly, that this smoking gun, the client list that everyone's talking about, I just don't think it exists, or at least in a documentary form, because otherwise, why wouldn't it have been released by now?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I do think that, again, there will be a lot of people who it's in their best interest that this is not released. We know that even Donald Trump himself was a visitor to Epstein Island, or whatever it was, Fantasy Island, whatever it was called. And we know there are a lot of very powerful people, not least of which are Prince Andrew as well. There must be something, but will it be redacted? Will it be... Is this the stalling process? Because it makes them look all as guilty as hell.
I mean, I don't know. Obviously, there were other people who participated in the sex acts with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, that's pretty clear. All the names are out there. There have been civil lawsuits. There have been allegations. You know, just, is there a black book? Is there a document that identifies all this? I mean, the best person to know would obviously be Ghislaine Maxwell, and she's serving significant time, and she's not talking, which is surprising in and of itself. I can tell you that I put more than 1,000 people in federal prison, and I can count on 2 fingers, only 2 that didn't cooperate with me, because often there's a significant reason, a benefit in cooperating. You get a reduced sentence. So obviously Maxwell's maintaining her innocence. She's not talking. This document, at least, is nowhere to be found. So I do believe there were other participants. Who those were, it has to come from either a paper or someone that had the knowledge. And unfortunately, at least up until now, no one's talking, and that document hasn't been disclosed.
Oh, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Listen, it's been fabulous talking to you. Thank you.